Chapter 191, Trembling in Fear. Compared to the other faction of the Running Corpse sect, they kept a much lower profile. They were even more strange. To cultivate the way of the corpse, these people even buried themselves underground for thousands of years. When the Tianwu Emperor exterminated the Running Corpse sect, he had also killed the experts of this faction. However, some of the old monsters hiding underground managed to avoid these attacks. Although this faction was preserved, because their cultivation technique was too strange, there was no one willing to learn the way of the corpse, and the Running Corpse sect completely vanished. After Xiao Chen heard Ma Chen's introduction, he was filled with doubts. He asked, "According to your words, they turned the powerful into corpses. The miners that turned into corpses in the tunnels clearly did not have much combat prowess. So why turn them into corpses?" Ma Chen smiled faintly. Naturally, they did not have much combat prowess as their bodies were not very strong. There would not be many changes after they become corpses. The truly strong ones should be the first batch we encountered. After using some special methods to refine them, they obtained their combat prowess. As for the miners we met, they were likely turned into corpses in passing. After all, it is not difficult for them to do so. Xiao Chen revealed a livid expression as he clenched his left fist tightly. He said, "This group of people are too inhumane. They did not even let off the innocent people." Ma Chen laughed. "Humane? These people are neither alive or dead, how humane can they be? They are no longer humans since long ago. Otherwise, they would not have incited public anger back then." After thinking for a while, Ma Chen continued, "I wonder where Elder Yi and the others are. We are stuck here and we can neither advance nor retreat. If we can't get out, it is likely that we will die here." The exit of the mines was a tightly guarded secret. It was impossible for the inner sect disciples here on a sect mission to know about it. There were people who specialized in bringing people in or out. They would first place people in a secret treasure before transporting them around. If something really happened to Yi Wen and the others, it would be possible that Xiao Chen and Ma Chen would never get out and die here. Their bodies might even be refined into corpses. Xiao Chen felt fear just thinking about it. However, when he thought about it again, he felt it was impossible for anything to happen to Yi Wen. Back then, when he was telling Yi Wen of the strange things he noticed about Mu Shinya and Supervisor Li, he had an extremely calm expression. He even warned Xiao Chen to mind his own business. Upon retrospection, Yi Wen was actually hinting that he already knew of this long ago. He was warning him not to alert the enemies by accident. Bang! Xiao Chen punched the wall violently. His fist carried a force of thousands of kilograms. A large hole immediately appeared in the wall and rocks fell continuously. If he really knew of this matter in advance, he could have saved the lives of all these miners. However, he did not move these miners away in order to avoid alerting the enemies, so that his plan could succeed. When Xiao Chen thought about the miners, he felt that was not worth it. He recalled the scene of Supervisor Zhao pleading with him on their behalf, to help mediate for those miners whose terms were ending soon. These people could have left safely at the end of the month. They could have left these endless hell-like tunnels forever and reunite with their wives and family. However, all of these things were just an illusion now. He thought that by putting in more effort and taking care of them, he could allow them to leave safely. In the end, he had to personally kill these miners who turned into corpses. "Yi Wen, you are too ruthless." Ma Chen said in astonishment. "Junior brother Yi, what are you doing? Don't take things too hard, everything will turn out for the best. Elder Yi and the rest will definitely find a way to deal with these corpses. By then, there would be a way out." "Who?" Before Ma Chen had finished his words, Xiao Chen suddenly attacked. Xiao Chen used his hand to chop at the back of Ma Chen's neck, which caused him to faint as he stared at Xiao Chen in astonishment. Xiao Chen watched as Ma Chen fell over slowly and said, "I'm sorry, I have to find that person to clarify everything." Senior brother Ma, you have to be inconvenienced for a while. After Xiao Chen spoke, he dug out a shallow pit and slowly placed Ma Chen into it. Then he used the soft dirt to cover Ma Chen's body. With Ma Chen's cultivation, it would be no problem for him to breathe under the soft dirt. This way, the corpses would not be able to find him, he would be safe while he was unconscious. After doing all this, Xiao Chen walked forward with a resolute gaze. Yi Wen was definitely at the place where the Fiend King was being suppressed. Xiao Chen had gone there once, so he remembered the way there. All he needed to do was to find the hidden switches and he would be able to enter. After Xiao Chen walked for a bit and turned a corner, a petite figure slowly appeared. It was difficult to make out who it was in the pitch-dark tunnel. However, Xiao Chen was very familiar with this person. After spending half a month with her, Xiao Chen would able to recognize her from just a silhouette, Mu Xinya. Mu Xinya looked at Xiao Chen and smiled, "Senior brother Yi." Xiao Chen could not be bothered to speak with her, he immediately drew the lunar shadow saber from the scabbard. The moment the saber left the scabbard, it glowed with a resplendent electric light. In the time it took for a spark to fly, the dark tunnel was brightly lit up. Both their expressions changed under the electric light. Xiao Chen's face turned cold and emotionless, whereas Mu Xinya's lovable face looked slightly dejected. Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring Art, Roaming Dragon's 9 Transformations. Qingyan's Secret Technique, Clear Wind Chop. Xiao Chen executed a high-level technique of the Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring Art, Roaming Dragon's 9 Transformations. Xiao Chen's figure vanished into the electric light, leaving 9 images in the air. Without touching the ground, each image turned and moved in a different direction. 9 gusts of cool breezes appeared in the tunnel. Xiao Chen continuously executed 9 clear wind chops at the speed of lightning. If the blade was hidden amongst the wind, there was no killing qi leaked. Instead, it would seem to be as gentle as a lover. It was like he was whispering sweet nothings in the gentle spring breeze. Shua. The 9 images all merged back together. Xiao Chen returned the saber to the scabbard as he stood quietly behind Mu Xinya. There was a calm expression on his face, not betraying any emotion, it was incredibly cold. Pu Kai. The 9 death acupoints on Mu Xinya's chest, Baihui, Qingming, Juwei, Huk, Shenk, Qihai, Guanyuan, Zongji, and Kyugu, all spurted out blood at the same time. She then fell to the ground with a bang. The 9 death acupoints on her chest were all struck by the saber. Even a martial saint would die immediately from this, there was no way to treat this. Mu Xinya was pale as she smiled bitterly. I thought that after working together for half a month, you would at least let me finish speaking before killing me. I did not expect senior brother Yi to be so merciless. Xiao Chen said in a frosty voice, I also did not expect that underneath your innocent exterior, you harbored a cruel heart. I used to think that regardless of your errant motives, you would not stoop to involving all these innocent people. Xiao Chen did not consider himself to be a good person, but he was normally unable to do utterly heartless actions like this. However, this girl in front of him had crossed the bottom line in his heart. In this strong-eat-weak world, where natural selection prevailed, morality was something that was lost long ago. People respected the strong, he whose fist was bigger was right. Ever since the first day he had arrived in this world, when he was humiliated by the people of the Shao clan, he completely understood this principle. However, there were some things that had to be maintained no matter how the situation changed. Willfully slaughtering the innocent without any reason was this bottom line that must be maintained. Mu Xinya had violated Xiao Chen's bottom line. Kill on sight. If Yi Wen did not have an appropriate explanation, Xiao Chen would also seek justice on behalf of all these minors. Pooh. Just as Xiao Chen was preparing to leave, Mu Xinya's body started to move. He quickly stopped and took a look. Turning into a corpse. Xiao Chen gazed on with suspicions. Mu Xinya's skin looked like it had been sliced apart by a knife. It split apart with a shua sound. A figure slowly emerged from the skin. She was completely naked. A full head of silver hair covered her back, giving off a faint glow in the pitch-dark tunnel. The girl in front of him looked like an elf. Her skin was snow white. It was very attractive in the darkness. Xiao Chen's gaze pierced through the darkness, but he was not focusing on the parts that would make a man have a nosebleed. Instead, he was focused on her ears. They were a pair of sharp ears. They were exactly like the elves from the movies. She was extremely pretty. However, elves did not exist in this world. These pair of ears that were clearly not human proved her identity. She was a fiend, a girl from the fiend race. Mu Xinya waved her hand and long white robes appeared. She quickly put it on in front of Xiao Chen, covering all the important parts. Mu Xinya looked at Xiao Chen and said, "Senior brother Yi, it was not convenient for me to tell you the truth. The entire spirit mines is currently in chaos. You should stay here and not move. After the whole thing is over, I will bring you out. I said before, I will do my best to find an opportunity to save you, to repay the favor." Who? After Mu Xinya said that, she moved quickly, turning into a silver flash of light and vanished from Xiao Chen's sight. Her speed was faster than Xiao Chen's small perfection Azure Dragon cloud soaring art by at least 10%. Xiao Chen was slightly stunned. In the instant he was distracted, Mu Xinya had completely vanished. Chase. Following the path that Mu Xinya took, Xiao Chen chased after her. He discovered the place that Mu Xinya was headed was where the Fiend King was sealed. The path was exactly the same as Xiao Chen remembered, but all the secret switches were activated. Xiao Chen was able to follow unhindered. After some time, he finally arrived at the huge underground cave. Kai. Before he got near, he could hear the sounds of intense fighting. The sound of killing filled the air and shouts rang out continuously. Xiao Chen hid himself and extended out his spiritual sense to carefully observe the situation. Within the cave, the river seemed to be like a boundary. The side that had the Fiend King suppressed were the bladesmen of the Divine Saber camp. They held their sabers and did not make a move. On the other side was a large corpse horde. They were all the type of corpses that was refined by that special method. Counting roughly, there was at least 1,000 of them. Furthermore, more corpse kept pouring out from underground. This caused the huge cave to be tightly packed. Just one look would cause one's scalp to go numb. In the middle of the river, there was a large group of Heavenly Saber Pavilion's martial saints. They were fighting with the corpses that attempted to cross the river. The scene of the intense battle surpassed Xiao Chen's imagination. The clear river water was already dyed red with blood. The strength of the corpse also exceeded Xiao Chen's initial expectation. Even an expert of the martial saint cultivation realm was not able to kill this specially refined corpse with one blow. There were only about 200 Heavenly Saber Pavilion's martial saints. The corpses completely outnumbered them. They were working very hard, defending passively. However, the main forces of both sides had not made their move yet. The bladesmen of Divine Saber camp stood in front of the stone sealing the fiend. Their killing chi was reserved as they grasped their sabers tightly. They had no intentions of making a move. Xiao Chen watched for a long time, but he did not discover any Heavenly Saber Pavilion's martial monarchs leading the battle. There were only 10 martial king elders standing in the distance, observing the situation. Amongst this group of martial kings, Xiao Chen discovered Yi Wen's figure. Yi Wen was the same as before. He was unable to discover what he was thinking by watching his expressions. He was very calm, as though everything was under his control. On the side of the running corpse sect, there were no strong corpses fighting. There were 3 huge corpses standing in the middle. These 3 corpses were 5 meters tall. Their skin was completely black. There was a dense black chi flowing out from their bodies. Occasionally, they would be roaring hoarsely. Xiao Chen only took a look from a distance, but he still felt a tremendous pressure, causing him to tremble in fear. Are these the three corpse kings? Xiao Chen wondered in fear. For a corpse to turn into corpse kings, they must have been at least a martial monarchs when they were alive. After they died and were refined into a corpse, they could retain their previous martial techniques and combat experience. Under the running corpse sect's control, they were much stronger than regular martial monarchs. This was because of their undying bodies, the lack of fear, the lack of a sense of pain, and an impervious steel-like body that could not be destroyed by water or fire. Beside the three corpse kings, there were hundreds of 2-meter-tall corpses. Their entire bodies emitted black chi. They were very stout, and it was clear from the aura they were different from the other corpses. They should be the mutated corpses that were only second to the corpse kings. They would be able to hold their ground when pitting their combat prowess against a martial king. Behind the corpse kings, there were about 10 people dressed in black. They were all hiding in the shadows of the corpse kings. Xiao Chen discovered Supervisor Li among them. Looking further back, Xiao Chen's spiritual sense also discovered 10 corpse monarchs standing there without moving. These were the inheritors of the running corpse sect's faction who walked the path of the corpse, turning themselves into an existence that was neither dead nor alive. Compared to a regular corpse, they still had the consciousness of a normal person. They were very difficult to deal with. A regular corpse king was no match for them. Xiao Chen was feeling suspicious. The running corpse sect had such a strong lineup. How did the Heavenly Saber Pavilion hold their ground? They only had 10 martial kings present here. Although the bladesmen of the Divine Saber camp gave off an extremely horrifying evil chi, their cultivation ranged from medial grade martial saint to peak martial saint. Even if they had rich combat experience, they were definitely not a match for the corpse kings. The battle in the river was starting to tip in the running corpse sect's favor. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion martial saints were slowly defeated. A significant number of corpses rushed up the opposite side of the river. However, before these corpses could get far, a strong energy was fired and crushed their harder than metal skin. In front of this energy, they were as soft as tofu. Xiao Chen observed carefully and discovered this energy came from the martial kings. There was a qualitative difference between the strength of a martial king and a martial saint. Just one attack was able to easily crush these specially refined corpses. After the martial kings made a move, the battle that was tipping in the running corpse sect's favor regained a balance once again. Who? Suddenly, a silver figure flew over in the air. That person's silver hair was dazzling. Her petite body then landed on the ground firmly, beside the three corpse kings. Supervisor Li frowned and stepped forward. Princess Mu, why are you only appearing now? Mu Xinya looked at the situation and said indifferently, I had some personal matters to deal with. There is no need to mind it. Tell me about the situation now. Supervisor Li answered, it is unknown why, but the Heavenly Saber Pavilion Supreme Elders have not shown themselves yet. I am not confident, so I did not make a strong push. Mu Xinya thought for a while before saying, there is no need to care about them. Just make a strong push. Once the fiend ancestor is out, no matter how many of their supreme elders come, opposition would be useless. Supervisor Li said, are you confident? If we fail, the 100 years of effort the running corpse sect has put in will be wasted. Mu Xinya took out an arrow shining with a black light. This is an ancient forbidden weapon of my race. It had been passed down since the ancient era, then it was refined for 1,000 years. As long as I can enter the 9 concealed saber demonic formation, I am confident of breaking the fiend sealing stone. By then, all the realms within the spirit mine will be broken, all the spirit stones will become masterless objects. There are a lot of spirit stones. They will be sufficient for you to revitalize the running corpse sect. After Supervisor Li heard that, he thought about it for a while. Then he discussed it with the people behind him. Finally, he made his decision, push strongly. The 10 black-clothed men controlling the corpses kept changing their hand gestures. All the corpse on the ground stamped on the ground and leapt up into the air. Within the cave, there were caca sounds coming from the walls in all directions. Like flowers blooming, corpses climbed out from the walls. These corpses all seemed berserk, their strength significantly increased in an instant. The running corpse sect now completely held the advantage. Before they could retreat, the remaining 100 martial saints in the river were all torn to shreds by the corpses. The 10 heavenly saber pavilion martial kings exchanged looks, and then executed their movement techniques, quickly moving to the back of the cave. This allowed the berserk corpses to rush forward. Kill. Just at this moment, the Divine Saber Camp's 100 bladesmen finally made their move. They all shouted at the same time, causing the entire cave to tremble lightly. A surging killing chi was released without holding anything back. They turned into a large ocean. The formless evil chi actually managed to envelop the entire 1,000-meter-tall cave. The evil chi infiltrated their bones. Even though the corpses were already dead, due to the instinct of the body, they could not help but tremble. Bang! 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 They all drew their sabers together. The sound of 100 sabers being drawn at the same time echoed throughout the cave. The sabers were 1 meter long and about 5 centimeters thick. There was a scarlet glow on the blades. With one look, it was obvious these were not ordinary sabers. These sabers were known as Bloodsucker sabers. When they were stabbed into a living person's body and used with a special cultivation technique, they could instantly suck the person dry of blood. There was once a powerhouse of the Divine Saber Camp who sucked his opponent dry in one move. The forging method of these sabers was already lost. Once, 1,000 were passed down in the Divine Saber Camp. Disciples not from the Divine Saber Camp, even if they were core disciples, could not obtain these sabers. After the 100 bladesmen from Divine Saber Camp made their move, the situation immediately turned around. In front of the Divine Saber Camp disciples, even the refined corpses the martial saints found difficult to deal with were completely sucked dry with one stroke of their sabers. After the corpses fell, they turned into strands of resentment and flew into the sabers. The more they massacred the corpses, the more resentment the Bloodsucker sabers collected. The Divine Saber Camp disciples were like demons from hell. They all had fierce expressions. They looked like devils and monsters, even more horrifying than the corpses. The more resentment they collected, the heavier the evil chi they released. The speed and strength of their sabers increased explosively. The path of killing, Xiao Chen thought in shock. No wonder the first time I saw the Divine Saber Camp disciples, there was a horrifying murderous intent coming from my heart. He did not expect there would be such evil cultivation techniques in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. They comprehended their martial path by immersing themselves in the joy of killing. All their martial techniques were geared toward killing. Such a cultivation technique was even more horrifying than the path of corpses. A cultivator who walked the path of killing must kill at least thousands of cultivators in his life. Furthermore, the people they killed could not have a cultivation lower than theirs. Otherwise, it would be useless to this cultivation. They could collect the resentment after their enemies died and use it to raise their cultivation. It was very horrifying. A cultivator that walked the path of killing would be able to hold their own against an opponent who had one cultivation realm higher than them. If the opponent was careless, it might even be easy to kill the opponent. The most important thing was that these people were not afraid of death. The closer they were to death, the more excited they felt. Their strength would even increase by many folds. It was just 100 Divine Saber Camp bladesmen, but they were able to defend the 9 concealed saber demonic formation tightly without letting anything through. They instantly killed any corpses that got near. Under the control of the black-clothed men, the corpses continued to launch themselves forward. Currently, the sounds of killing shook the place. The sounds of roaring were like thunder. The entire underground cave seemed to become hell on earth. It was very cruel. The flowing blood was enough to form a river. Before long, the Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen killed more than 1,000 ordinary refined corpses. However, the Divine Saber Camp did not have any casualties. The boundless black resentment wound around the Bloodsucker sabers. When one looked carefully, there were the painful cries of vengeful spirits coming from them. The Divine Saber Camp's people were not tired. Under the stimulation of the resentment, they became even stronger instead. Supervisor Lee was astonished. Although he knew the Divine Saber Camp was very strong, he did not expect it to be at such horrifying levels. Killing these refined corpses was as easy as chopping vegetables. Mu Shinya said indifferently, "Don't be frightened. They are only using a special secret technique. In addition to their own strength, these corpses without spiritual intelligence cannot hurt them. Preserve your strength and use the mutated corpses." Supervisor Lee nodded and waved his hand. Beside the 3 corpse kings, the 100-odd mutated corpse emitting black chi all leapt over. The mutated corpses already had a little spiritual intelligence. They had preserved most of their combat prowess from when they were alive. With one order, they automatically went forward to attack. Furthermore, the strength of their physical bodies was strong. When they were alive, they were at least martial kings. After they received the order, they moved like fast arrows, leaping across the 100 meters wide river. They instantly arrived before the Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen. Kill. The number of mutilated corpses was about the same as the number of Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen. When they came into contact with each other, a huge battle began. Compared to the refined corpses, made from ordinary miners' bodies, the mutated corpses were significantly stronger. The strong Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen were not able to kill them instantly. When the Bloodsucker sabers in their hands struck the mutated corpses, they gave off metallic clangs. There were no scars left behind on the mutated corpses. They gave off a weird, "ga-ga" laughter as they continuously executed the martial techniques they knew when they were alive. Relying on the strength of their bodies, the mutated corpses had a significant advantage over the Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen. As time dragged on, their advantages grew bigger. Solitary Eagle Claw. The right hand of one of the corpse suddenly grew larger. Its 5 black fingers were as sharp as a beast's. There was a sonic boom, and the claws stabbed into one of the Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen. The Divine Saber Camp's bladesman revealed a pained expression. There was a determined look in his eyes as he used the Bloodsucker saber to chop at the mutated corpse's neck. The corpse's withered face had a strange smile on it. It recklessly grabbed the Bloodsucker saber with its right claw and clawed out the bladesman's heart with the other. Pussy. The Bloodsucker saber lit up with a scarlet glow. This final attack pierced the mutated corpse's body, draining it completely. A similar scene could be seen in other places. Occasionally, a Divine Saber Camp's bladesman died. However, before he died, these Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen would take down a mutated corpse with them. The battle was intense. There were many occurrences of mutual destruction. It was very bloody. It was hard to bear such a scene. Mu Shinya, who was on the other side of the river, watched the battlefield as she fiddled with the arrow in her hand. She said in a low voice, "I'm going to make my move, cover me." The 2 corpse monarchs, who cultivated the way of the corpse, stepped forward when they heard this. They followed Mu Shinya, quickly heading to the other side. The Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen wanted to block them. However, before they got close, they were sent flying by a palm strike from the 2 corpse monarchs. The wind from the palm strike carried a huge force, blowing away the Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen. The 10 corpse kings of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion watched this scene coldly from a distance. They watched as Mu Shinya led the 2 corpse monarchs and got closer to the 9 concealed saber demonic formation. Mu Shinya had a bad feeling in her heart. Why did it feel a lot easier than I expected? The defense of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion should not be this weak. Never mind, as long as I can release the fiend ancestor. Given the strength of the fiend ancestor as a sage, there will be no one in the heavenly saber pavilion who can stop him. By the time, all schemes will be useless against absolute power, it will all be useless. Go. Demon Exterminator Arrow. The so-called forbidden weapon referred to a secret treasure that could only be used once, sometimes up to twice or thrice. Blacksmiths from the ancient era refined them. Because of the limited number of times it could be used, they were mighty beyond compare. They frequently had an apocalyptic level of might. As Mu Shinya was fiddling with the black arrow, it gave off a dazzling black light. The arrow emitted a destructive aura. A strong wind blew around Mu Shinya's body, surrounding her and the two corpse monarchs. The wind blew in all directions around her. The mutated corpses and the divine saber camp's bladesmen were instantly blown away by the strong winds. Everything within 100 meters was cleared out, leaving empty land. Su. There was the sound of something breaking through the air. It was accompanied by a flash of light. The arrow struck the fiend sealing stone and caused a loud exploding sound. The huge rock cracked and turned into countless fragments. Rumble. The instant the fiend sealing stone cracked, the entire underground cave started shaking continuously. Even Xiao Chen, who was standing far away, was affected. The sudden shaking caused him to sway as well. Roar. A loud roar came from underneath the fiend sealing stone. It sounded very ancient. Suddenly, a huge beast claw extended out and smashed the ground violently. It indiscriminately smashed the corpses and divine saber camp's bladesmen who could not flee in time into pulp. Bang! The ground shook again. Another huge beast claw came out and smashed the ground. Another batch of mutated corpses and divine saber camp's bladesmen died. When the 10 heavenly saber pavilions martial kings hiding at the back saw the fiend king about to come out, their expressions started to change. Yi Wen said, "The fiend king is about to come out. It's time to inform the 7 peak masters and supreme elders." The other 9 people nodded, and they all waved their arms. A jade strip shot out from their sleeves. The jade strips gave off a faint glow as they arranged themselves into a strange formation in the air. Mysterious talisman scripts started to appear on them, one by one. They turned into bright spots of light. They were incomparably resplendent. Xiao Chen did not pay attention to this with his spiritual sense. Instead, he was watching the fiend sealing stone in horror. He saw the powerful fiend king climbing out slowly from underneath. At this moment, the fiend king had stood up completely. It was a huge wolf who was 50 meters tall. Its white fur appeared very bright in the dark cave. 2 huge, sharp, protruding teeth could be seen, gleaming with a sharp cold light. There was an indistinct red glow in its red eyes. When the peerless fiend king released its aura, all the divine saber camp's bladesmen and the long-dead corpses started to tremble. They could not help but prostrate themselves on the ground. It felt like there was a huge force on their shoulders. They were unable to overcome it and get up. Roar. The fiend king roared angrily, resounding endlessly in the air. It was ear-splitting, causing one's scalp to go numb. The fiend king grabbed a soul chain with a claw. The 9 soul holy weapons stuck in the ground could not help but shake. Finally, they could not resist the fiend king and were pulled up. They were flung to a distant place. Pu Si. A huge claw grabbed a divine saber camp's bladesman like it was catching a mouse. The divine saber camp's bladesman struggled very hard but to no avail. Pu Si. The huge claw clenched tightly, crushing all the bones of this divine saber camp's bladesman. He bled from his 7 orifices and died. The fiend king tossed the body into the air and tore it apart as it was landing, causing blood to rain down. The huge wolf opened its jaws, and the blood was sucked in. Bang! It punched the wall, and the entire caving started to shake intensely again. Rock kept falling from the ceiling as the cave shook. This was the strength of the peerless fiend king. With a casual punch, it could shake the mountains and cause the earth to tremble. A black-clothed man from the running corpse sect in the distance revealed a very excited expression when he saw the mighty fiend king. It's been more than 100 years. We finally see hope. With such great strength, there will be none who can stop us in the heavenly saber pavilion. It is destined for my running corpse sect to rise in this era. Mu Xinya's petite body knelt respectfully on the ground. She said in a deep voice, "Heavenly Wolf Race, the 180th successor greets the sage ancestor. It's been 1,000 years. A long 1,000 years. This king is finally out. Ha, 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 ha. I will wash the heavenly saber pavilion in blood to take revenge for my 1,000-year imprisonment." The peerless fiend king laughed maniacally. After a while, he stopped. He said to Mu Xinya on the ground, "Get up, my descendant. I can feel the pure bloodline of the heavenly wolf. I will bestow a unsurpassable glory unto you." Mu Xinya stood and said, "To be able to rescue the sage ancestor is Mu Xinya's glory." The heavenly wolf race is currently in a desolate land. The environment is dangerous, and they are subjected to trials and hardships. In light of the bigger picture, I beseech the sage ancestor to leave this place quickly. The fiend king snorted, "Not a problem. I have already recovered a fifth of my strength. No one can stop me from leaving the heavenly saber pavilion. When I snatched away the spirit vein origin and became a fiend emperor, the whole world will bow at the feet of the heavenly wolf race. Just a fifth of his strength and he is so strong already. If he recovers all his strength, how strong will he be?" Xiao Chen wondered in fear. "Who?" A shadow flew at Xiao Chen quickly. When he heard the sound of wind, Xiao Chen felt his chest tighten. He quickly executed the Azure Dragon Cloud soaring art and retreated backward. However, just as Xiao Chen landed firmly, a withered claw burst from the ground and grabbed his right foot. The withered claw fluffed him with an irresistible force. Xiao Chen flew like a sandbag, smashing violently into the wall. He then fell heavily to the ground with a loud bang. "I did not expect an ant-like person like you to be able to escape from hundreds of refined corpses." As Xiao Chen struggled to stand, he clearly saw the appearance of the person. He discovered it was the corpse monarch that knew the earth evasion spell. He was wearing long golden robes and had a glittering crown on his head. The corpse monarch's strength was unfathomable. He had the strength of a martial king at the very least. Compared to Xiao Chen's inferior grade martial Grand Master cultivation, he was much stronger. Xiao Chen probably did not even have the opportunity to run. Boom. Just as Xiao Chen was thinking, the hard black fist of the corpse monarch was already flying at him. This was simply a plain fist without any tricks to it. It carried a huge force and punched towards Xiao Chen's face. This was just an ordinary punch that relied on his speed and physical strength. It was not a martial technique. However, when the corpse monarch punched out, it was full of vigor, breaking through the air. Before Xiao Chen had time to think, the black fist was already before him. Relying on his reflexes, Xiao Chen clenched his right hand into a fist and punched out. Bang! The two fists met each other. They both relied on the strength of their physical bodies. The huge force generated a spiraling ripple in the air that did not scatter for a long moment. The opponent's strength was much greater than Xiao Chen's. This punch caused Xiao Chen to be blasted backward like a sandbag and crash into the wall behind him again. The force from the corpse's fist shook Xiao Chen's internal organs. They all churned. Blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth. It was clear he was significantly injured. This was the first time Xiao Chen was at a disadvantage when comparing the strength of physical bodies. He had tempered his body for 10-odd years since he was young. After that, the seven-leaf flower further tempered his flesh. It could be said it had been reborn. His old self had been cast off. Xiao Chen's punch carried a force of more than 1,500 kilograms. It was easy for him to split a huge stone. However, the corpse monarch had a body that was especially refined. He turned his body into a corpse. After at least 100 years of cultivating, a casualty punch from him would have 5,000 kilograms of force. 5,000 kilograms of force versus 1,500 kilograms of force, it was clear which was stronger. The corpse monarch watched as Xiao Chen struggled to stand. There was a look of surprise in his eyes. This may have been a casual punch, but the force it carried would be able to cripple the right arm of a martial saint easily. His opponent was only a martial grand master. This punch should have ruptured his heart and lungs. Who? The corpse monarch moved in a flash and grabbed Xiao Chen's neck with his claws, easily lifting him up. He placed his other hand on Xiao Chen's chest. Gah. 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 Interesting. There is still a cultivator that has specially tempered his body in this age. Such a good body is sufficient for refining a golden ancient corpse. I will hand you over to my senior brother later. He will refine you into an undefeatable corpse. By then, you will become unrivaled under the heavens, consider it your glory. When Xiao Chen heard that the corpse monarch wanted to refine him into a corpse, Xiao Chen was startled. However, he was being grabbed by the throat. The hand was as tight as a vice. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not escape. Xiao Chen could not use his essence either. All the cards he had to play were now useless. He could not do anything. The corpse monarch smiled coldly. He punched the area of his dantian and then he pulled his hand back. Strands of black qi flowed out and slowly entered Xiao Chen's body. Xiao Chen felt a black qi appearing in his dantian, turning into a horrifying cage. It sealed up his martial spirit completely. All the essence in his body vanished. Xiao Chen was horrified to find that after he lost his connection to the Azure Dragon martial spirit, he could no longer feel the essence that filled his body. He was no different from an ordinary person. There is no need to think about escape. This corpse king imprint can both attack and defend. It is more than sufficient to deal with an inferior grade martial grand master like you. With a thought, I can make you explode and die. After the corpse monarch spoke, he carried Xiao Chen and went back into the cave. Then he tossed Xiao Chen over to Supervisor Li. Supervisor Li felt suspicious as he received Xiao Chen's body. After he clearly saw who it was, he smiled. So, it is young Master Yi. Why are you in such a miserable state? Xiao Chen remained expressionless and kept silent. He condensed his spiritual sense in his dantian and carefully observed the corpse king imprint, looking for a way to break it. A black cage was in that empty space. There was black qi extending out from above. A black corpse was sitting there cross-legged above the cage. He could vaguely see a surging river in the cage and a tiny azure dragon attacking the black cage continuously. Before Xiao Chen's spiritual sense got near, the corpse king sitting on the cage suddenly opened its eyes. It fired a beam of light and eliminated a big portion of Xiao Chen's spiritual sense. Spiritual sense could actually be destroyed. This was the first time Xiao Chen encountered such a situation. The corpse king imprint was truly outrageous. Senior brother Li, take a look at this fellow's body. It might be possible to refine him into a golden ancient corpse. When Supervisor Li heard this, he revealed an astonished expression. He quickly inspected Xiao Chen's body. After a while, his countenance grew joyful. However, the joy vanished after a while. This is not an innate divine body, he tempered it later. It is slightly short of the requirements of refining a golden ancient corpse. However, it's pretty good. We will keep him first. There should be no problems with refining him into a bronze ancient body after I soak him in lunar water. Rumble. While they were speaking, a few rays of light suddenly appeared on the 9 concealed saber magic formation across the river. Aside from the Qingyan Peak, the peak masters of the other 6 peaks had all arrived. Behind the 6 of them, there were 6 old men standing quietly. Xiao Chen saw Shen Manjin amongst them. These were the supreme elders of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. They were all martial monarchs. When the Fiend King saw them appeared, he had a mocking expression on his face. Just 1,000 years and the Heavenly Saber Pavilion has fallen into such a state. There is not even a martial sage present. It looks like I can level the Heavenly Saber Pavilion today. A person walked out from the group. He was the strongest peak master of Heavenly Saber Pavilion, the Tianyu Peak's peak master, Leng Tianzhong. He looked at the 50 meters tall Fiend King and smiled faintly. Even at the brink of death, you still can laugh. We have been waiting for this day for more than 100 years. You think that without our permission the Fiend sealing stone could be destroyed so easily by a little girl? Mu Xinya's complexion paled. Could I have fallen into their trap? If it is so, I have become the sinner of my race. Hu Kai. A light flashed on the Heavenly Wolf King. All the bones in his body were cracking with a Pai Li Pala sound. After a while, he turned into a stout man about 2 meters tall. He flung his silver hair casually behind him, and his muscles bulged. It was shocking to see. He looked at the crowd and revealed a gentle smile. No matter what schemes you have, they are useless in the face of absolute power. Die now. Boom. Immediately after he spoke, Leng Tianzhong exchanged a punch with the Heavenly Wolf King. A strong shockwave broke the space apart, forming a black crack. The crack expanded non-stop. It was like a black tentacle. The surrounding corpses and Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen who could not flee in time were instantly pulled into the crack. Rise. A strong, yet gentle force enveloped Mu Xinya, gently throwing her to the other side of the river. Leng Tianzhong somersaulted in the air and landed firmly. He said in a deep voice, 9 Saber Demon Punishing Formation, behead this fiend and seize the fiend core, aid me in rising to martial sage. The 9 soul holy weapons immediately flew into the hands of the 9 people. The remaining 3 people held onto the soul chains and sealed the surrounding space. A small realm appeared in that space. Everyone could see only the blurry chains surrounding the space. 9 Saber Demon Punishing Formation, kill. In the space sealed by the soul chains, shouting filling the air. 9 figures could be vaguely seen wielding soul holy weapons flickering with light. They were changing their position continuously, condensing the 9 Saber Demon Punishing Formation and trapping the Heavenly Wolf King. Angry, torrenting roars could be heard coming endlessly from the formation. It was clear the strength of the Heavenly Wolf King was suppressed in the formation. He was now disadvantaged. Mu Xinya stood and walked to Supervisor Li anxiously. Sect Leader Li, I will increase the payment by another half. Please go and help quickly. Otherwise, everything will be gone. The 9 Saber Demon Punishing Formation, 9 Concealed Saber Demonic Formation, and 9 Saber Heavenly Exterminating Formation were the 3 great formations of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. They required 9 people to execute them simultaneously. The 9 Concealed Saber Demonic Formation was especially used to suppress the enemy. When used together with the Fiend Sealing Stone, it could even suppress martial emperors. As long as the Fiend Sealing Stone was intact, the person inside could never escape. The 9 Saber Demon Punishing Formation was specifically used to punish the enemy. It was a formation that allowed 9 people to combine their strength. They could kill enemies 2 cultivation realms higher. As for the final 9 Saber Heavenly Exterminating Formation, it was the strongest formation out of the 3. However, it required 9 martial sages to execute it at the same time. According to legend, after the 9 Saber Heavenly Exterminating Formation was executed, it could vanquish the heavens and destroy the earth, kill gods and exterminate demons. However, this formation had high requirements of cultivation realm. In the history of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, there had never been 9 martial sages at the same time. Thus, this formation had never been executed before. Whether this 9 Saber Heavenly Exterminating Formation really existed was frequently debated. No one could verify the authenticity of it. Supervisor Li saw the might of the 9 Saber Demon Punishing Formation and had heard about it before. He saw the situation was dire and no longer dared be careless. Senior brothers, whether our running corpse sect can regain its glory will depend on this battle. Victory means life, and defeat means death. After he spoke, He led the black-clothed man controlling the 3 5-meter-tall corpse kings and the other 10 corpse monarchs quickly across the river. He wanted to break the 9 saber demon punishing formation from the outside. At the back of the cave, in the distance, the Thing Yi Wen and the other 9 martial kings were summoning using the jade strips slowly materialized. It was an ordinary wooden box about 1 meter tall and 5 centimeters wide. Its black exterior made it look ordinary. Written on the front of the box in calligraphy were the words, "Like the Emperor arriving personally." Yi Wen grabbed the wooden box and advanced forward. He led the group of martial kings and went through the 9 saber demon punishing formation, blocking Supervisor Li and his group. Supervisor Li laughed coldly. "You want to obstruct us with only 10 martial kings." Supervisor Li indeed had the power to back up his words. The 3 corpse kings had the strength of martial monarchs. Add in the 10 corpse monarchs walking the way of the corpse, even 10 peak martial kings would not be sufficient to deal with them. Yi Wen smiled faintly and released the wooden box, dropping it heavily on the ground. He looked mockingly at the crowd. He simply did not care at all about Supervisor Li and his group. Supervisor Li saw the words, "Like the Emperor arriving personally," on the box. He was stunned for a while, and then he laughed. "Just a wooden box? You really think that by writing the words, 'Like the Emperor arriving personally,' you will become a martial emperor? Even if a martial emperor came, I will refine him into a corpse." A group of creatures, neither dead or alive, boasting. Yi Wen had a mocking expression on his face. Then he read out in a soft voice, "Like the Emperor arriving personally." As Yi Wen read out each word, the words on the wooden box would give off a dazzling, resplendent, golden light. After he read the 4 words, his aura rose non-stop. A golden light enveloped Yi Wen's entire body. Every strand of his hair, every inch of his body, they all gave off a pure golden light. He was like a god descending to earth. His aura rose to the peak. It was as though a martial emperor was arriving. Kill. A golden figure of light flew out of the wooden box, holding a saber in his hands. In that instant, a dazzling resplendent light lit up the entire cave. It was so piercing that no one could open their eyes. They all felt an intense pain in their eyes. The figure of light dashed by and the 3 corpse kings were split in half. Their black blood filled the air. Mu Shinya revealed a pained expression on her exquisite face as she watched the resplendent golden light. She muttered, "We're finished. That is a divine weapon. The heavenly wolf race's hundreds of years of hope has been extinguished." Divine weapon. Xiao Chen was extremely shocked. This was not the first time he saw this wooden box. The wooden box he saw in the shop outside Saber City, as well as at the foot of Qingyan Peak, they all should be the same box. There were only 10 divine weapons in the world. However, no one knew where the 10 divine weapons were. Whether they were sabers, spears, swords, axes, or halberds, most people would not be certain of them. However, the strength of a divine weapon was indisputable. Words like, splitting the mountains, overturning seas and rivers, obliterating the void, destroying heaven and earth, were all insufficient to describe the might of a divine weapon. Back then, the Thunder Emperor searched for all sorts of treasures in the world, but he was only able to create a sub-divine weapon, the Thunderwood Sword. He searched all over the world, searching for the battle sage origins so he could make a divine weapon. Unfortunately, he did not manage to do it before he died. If this wooden box were really a divine weapon, it would be too shocking. It had to be understood that when he saw this outside of Saber City, it was in possession of an old man lacking a martial spirit. If he wanted it, it would have been possible for him to have obtained it then. When Xiao Chu saw Mu Xinya's expression, he felt a complex emotion. He hated this girl for being so ruthless, yet he empathized with her situation. From the beginning, she had fallen into the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's trap. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion only wanted to make use of her to destroy the Fiend Sealing Stone and release the Fiend King. After that, they wanted to kill the Fiend King to take his cultivation of a millennium. The Fiend Sealing Stone was a mysterious natural treasure. It was formed from the natural spiritual energy of heaven and earth and contained a huge energy. Aside from the ancient forbidden weapons, probably nothing else would be able to break it. At this moment, he understood, there was no such thing as absolute good or absolute evil in this world. In terms of ruthlessness, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion might possibly be even more so than Mu Shinya. In order to not alert their enemies, they abandoned all the miners in the spirit mines. Xiao Chen could roughly understand why the Heavenly Saber Pavilion did this. After the calamity from 20 years ago, they were severely weakened. All the cultivators in the martial sage realm probably died then. Thus, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion that had been passed down for 10,000 years had a huge gap in terms of strength. Within the strong Heavenly Saber Pavilion, there was not even a single martial sage. In order to make up for this huge deficit, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion could only set their eyes on the Fiend King that had been trapped for 1,000 years. Regardless of his inner core, skin, muscle, bones, or blood, they were all very valuable. However, Mu Shinya was oblivious to all this, she was confused. Not only had she aided the Heavenly Saber Pavilion with their agendas, she even put her life at risk. No way, the hope of the Heavenly Wolf race cannot end like this. A resolute look appeared on Mu Shinya's face. She did her best to raise her aura and prepared to step forward and make a desperate struggle. Xiao Chen quickly pulled her back. Although he could not use his essence, he still had his physical strength. Mu Shinya was not able to struggle free. Are you sending yourself to your death? Quickly leave. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion already noticed your plan long ago. The results had been decided from the very start. Mu Shinya looked strangely at Xiao Chen. She did not accept that Xiao Chen would hold her back here, he had wanted to kill her earlier. She used some strength and freed herself from Xiao Chen. She smiled and said, "Senior brother Yi, I told you before, my parents were the ones who instructed me to come here. Actually, I was not willing to do so. Everyone is afraid of death. Since I came here, there is no escape for me, there is also no escape for the Heavenly Wolf race." Her smile was as splendid and as beautiful as before. She pushed her feet off the ground and flew over the river, arriving on the other side and instantly joined the battle. On the other side of the river, Yi Wen was giving off a golden light from his entire body. He placed his hand on the wooden box as he stood his ground motionlessly. There was light emitted from the wooden box continuously. The other 9 martial kings behind him did not make a move. They only relied on the light from the divine weapon to kill the running corpse sect's forces. The result was that they could not proceed forward. The first saber light that came from the wooden box had split the 3 important corpse kings into half. After that, the figure of light fired off countless saber lights. They flew around in the air and looked very bright. The forces of running corpse sect that managed to react were not killed in one move. However, all they could do was flee, there was no chance to make a counter-attack. As Supervisor Li dodged the saber lights that flew wantonly in the air, he made some hand gestures with his hand. He intended to fix the 3 corpse kings on the ground. The corpse kings already had an undying body. If they were not instantly smashed into bits, it would be very difficult to kill them for good. As long as their controller was not dead, the controller could use their secret techniques to revive them. If the 3 corpse kings could be revived, they might be able to turn this around. He could tell that Yi Wen did not have control over the divine weapon. The saber lights in the air were no longer as powerful as the first strike. This made the problem very clear. It was not that the 9 people behind him did not make a move. Instead, they were not able to make a move. Through the ground under their feet, they were sending their essence to Yi Wen, allowing him to hold on. Even so, Supervisor Li was very anxious. The black-clothed men that controlled the corpse king were very weak, they were all dead already. He was the only one who barely held on. Because the strength of the Corpse King was very horrifying, it required 3 people to control them. Now that he was the only one that remained, it would be very difficult for him to revive them. Hu Kai. A silver figure flashed by above everyone's heads and headed for Yi Wen. A huge silver wolf appeared behind Mu Shinya. This was the totem of the heavenly wolf race. It had a horrifying might. The huge wolf howled angrily and a heavy sound wave spread out. It smashed apart all the saber lights that flew at Mu Shinya. She quickly landed and swiped her hand in the air. Her hand turned into 5 sharp claws and attacked Yi Wen. The 5 sharp claws were as keen as knives. As they slashed down through the air, they gave off a chi-chi sound. In the blink of an eye, it turned into 5 streams of scarlet aura. The claws grew larger as it moved and it was soon just 10 meters away. Yewen did not dare to be careless. He pointed at the air with his other hand. A golden human figure materialized and came out of his body. Clone Chop. This was a secret technique of the Jade Maiden Peak. Yi Wen had learned it after leaving Qingyan Peak. With the divine weapon supporting him, its might was significantly more horrifying than usual. This figure of light was like a real person. After it dodged Mu Shinya's attack, it nimbly turned around and made a counter-attack. Mu Shinya changed her position in the air 3 times but she was still unable to shake off the attacks of the figure of light. Mu Shinya slowly calmed down and did her best to focus. While in the air, she released her perception. After a while, her face lit up in joy. She said, "I found it." Mu Shinya somersaulted in the air and waved her hands in a crisscrossed fashion. A few invisible threads of light were instantly broken. The clone chop that Yi Wen had executed, the figure of light, immediately fell. So this was the secret behind the clone chop attacking so nimbly. It was related to these invisible threads of light. Once they were broken, the figure of light could no longer be controlled. Owu. As Mu Shinya was able to land, she howled like a ferocious wolf and leapt higher into the air. She leapt over Yi Wen's head and headed towards the 9 martial kings behind him. Oh no! Yi Wen exclaimed in his heart. Although Mu Shinya's cultivation was not high, if she managed to land there, the 9 people would be in trouble. These people needed to transmit essence to Yi Wen. They were not able to make a move. Anyone would be able to easily kill these insufferably arrogant martial kings. Currently, he was able to barely control the divine weapon. However, if one person died out of the 9, his control would immediately collapse. He would instead suffer a backlash from the divine weapon. Bang! Thinking of this, Yi Wen's expression turned serious. He inhaled deeply and slapped the wooden box violently with his right hand. A ripple immediately spread out. With a loud boom, Mu Shinya was bounced right back. Mu Shinya vomited a mouthful of blood as she landed on the ground heavily. Yi Wen, who executed the move, had an unsightly expression on his face. The figure of light that came out from the wooden box also slowed down significantly. The running corpse sect who were stretched thin finally had an opportunity to catch a breather. Supervisor Li took advantage of this to continuously make hand seals. The 2 halves of a corpse king started to slowly merge together. Bang! 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 Suddenly, just at this moment, there were a string of explosion sounds from the 9 saber demon punishing formation. Cracks appeared in the space locked up by the soul chains, then it completely shattered. The 9 saber demon punishing formation was broken. Everyone looked at this in shock before they quickly reacted. They immediately pulled back and retreated, fleeing from the area. The destructive force generated by a small realm falling apart was very horrifying. It was not something that even a martial king would dare to go head-on against. Bang! There was a very loud sound as space broke. The entire cave shook non-stop, the underground river tossed and turned and rocks fell continuously from the ceiling. Xiao Chen gingerly dodged the huge rocks falling from the ceiling. He did his best to keep his balance. At the moment, he was not able to use essence. If he fell, it was possible that he would be crushed by a rock before he could climb up. Hu Kai. Hu Kai. 12 figures came flying out from the 9 saber demon punishing formation. The soul holy weapons and soul chains in their hands were broken. All of their faces were incredibly pale. Ha ha ha. The 9 saber demon punishing formation is only so much. A bleak laughter came from the cloud of flying dust. When the dust cleared, the stout figure of the heavenly wolf king slowly appeared. His body did not seem to have any other injuries on it. His silver hair fluttered in the air and his aura was as wild as it was before. The soul holy weapon specialized in attacking the soul. After a soul was destroyed, it would only leave behind an empty shell. Naturally, there would be no possibility of that people living. That was why Leng Tianzheng and the other chose to use the soul holy weapon to attack the heavenly wolf king. His body was much stronger than regular people, much more resilient. If they used a physical weapon, the effect would not be good. However, they had not expected that even though the heavenly wolf king had only recovered a fifth of his strength, the strength of his soul was much stronger than his body. The 9 saber demon punishing formation could condense 81 battle arrays and was able to execute 9,999 killing moves. Even when coupled with the soul holy weapons, they still could not do anything. After he attacked for a long time without success, the heavenly wolf king finally managed to find the weak point of the 9 saber demon punishing formation. He attacked with all his strength and broke the small realm. The heavenly wolf king's aura was very bright and covered the sky. His gaze was like a lamp staring down the earth. Everyone he looked at felt fear in their hearts. Hey! The heavenly saber pavilion's divine weapon. The heavenly wolf king noticed the wooden box in Yi Wen's hands. His face lit up with joy as he said, "With this divine weapon, I am even more assured that I will obtain the spirit vein origin. Come." The heavenly wolf king opened his fingers and a strong suction force was stretched out for a distance of about 33 meters. Yi Wen felt his grip loosen and the wooden box flew into the hands of the heavenly wolf king. The situation turned around in an instant. Xiao Chen looked at all of this in shock. He originally thought the 12 heavenly saber pavilion's supreme elders would be able to easily deal with the heavenly wolf king. The heavenly wolf king had been weakened after being locked up for 1,000 years and they had even joined hands to execute the 9 saber demon punishing formation. However, he did not expect for the 9 saber demon punishing formation to be broken. Although the strength of the heavenly wolf king's soul was weakened, the 12 people had to endure the rebound from the formation breaking. They were severely injured. For the time being, they had no way of dealing with the heavenly wolf king. They could only watch the heavenly wolf king snatch the heavenly saber pavilion's divine weapon. Actually, if the 9 saber demon punishing formation was used with physical weapons, there might have been another result. After not moving his body for 1,000 years, his body would have been definitely weakened. However, it was different for his soul. In the past 1,000 years, the heavenly wolf king had nothing better to do, so he had been training his soul strength. Xiao Chen could not be bothered with all this. He was currently busy doing his best to try to break the Corpse King imprint. His spiritual sense turned into 10,000 arrows and fired at the cage in his dantian. As long as a single strand of spiritual sense entered there, he could connect to the Azure Dragon martial spirit. He was convinced he could deal with the situation from the inside and destroy the Corpse King imprint completely. The black cave rotated slowly. The Corpse King that sat on the cage from the start swept through the place with his gaze. All the arrows made from his spiritual sense completely disappeared. Xiao Chen did not give up. He was looking for an opportunity. His spiritual sense was playing a game of hide and seek with the Corpse King. Meanwhile, Supervisor Li saw the situation in the cave and revealed a maniacally smile. He controlled the Corpse King and rushed at Yi Wen with the 10 Corpse Monarchs. Their momentum was incredible. The remaining Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen all rushed over and the battle turned chaotic. Sand flew and rocks rolled and the wind blew manically. The scene turned intense once again. On the other side, amongst the 12 heavenly saber pavilion's supreme elders, the person with the highest cultivation was Shen Manjin. She said, "There is no need to worry, he cannot bring out the strength of the divine weapon. The damage that his soul received is even greater than we thought." An old man beside her pitched in, "That's right. Let's continue attacking, there is still a chance." The Heavenly Wolf King laughed coldly and used some strength to tear the wooden box apart. "Then, let me draw this divine weapon that nobody can wield. Let's see who can stop me then." The wooden box broke into pieces and a simple saber appeared. The saber was about 1.4 meters long. There were simple talisman scripts carved on the scabbard. The saber had a reserved glow and was overflowing with spiritual energy. The Heavenly Wolf King's face turned cold. He grabbed onto the hilt with his right hand and used a lot of strength to draw it. Ka-ca. The gaze of the group from the Heavenly Saber Pavilion revealed their shock. The divine saber was drawn out by an inch. The Heavenly Wolf King was overjoyed. If he was able to draw out this divine saber successfully, he would not fear the Heavenly Saber Pavilion even though his soul was significantly damaged and he could only use a fifth of his strength. If he had the divine saber, he would not feel fear even if the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion came at him together. "Stop him, we cannot let him draw the Heavenly Universe Saber. Otherwise, the entire spirit mines would be destroyed," Leng Tianzhong roared out. The 12 people all executed their best moves as fast as they could at the Heavenly Wolf King. Boom. Before the Heavenly Wolf King's smile could fade, the part of the saber blade that was revealed suddenly released an intense dazzling light. An apocalyptic energy was released from the saber blade. It seemed as though time had stopped in the underground cave. Their bodies all became completely frozen. Their minds were clear but they were not able to move their body. A faint blue ripple spread out in the air. The Heavenly Wolf King bore the brunt of this irresistible energy as he was in the front. Despite his strength, he was instantly blasted back. He vomited a mouthful of blood after he landed on the ground. The energy of the divine saber poured into his body, resulting in a "Pili Pala" sound. His body rolled continuously on the ground. After a moment, he turned back into a 50 meters tall giant silver wolf. No one could have expected such a result. The insufferably arrogant Heavenly Wolf King was actually struck back into his original form by the ripples given off by the divine saber. If the divine weapon was pulled out of the scabbard, how mighty would it be? After the Heavenly Universe saber released an intense light, the part of the blade that was unsheathed immediately sheathed itself and floated quietly in the air. The horrifying energy also vanished instantly. Dang! 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 The broken bits of the wooden box quickly flew into the sky and joined back together and stored the Heavenly Universe saber inside. The aura of the divine weapon instantly vanished. All their bodies returned to normal. Shen Manjin extended out her hand and the wooden box returned to her hands. She gave the Heavenly Wolf King on the ground a glance and said expressionlessly, "I forgot, the divine weapons were forged in the ancient era with the purpose of eliminating the fiend race. As a fiend, without having the strength of a fiend emperor, you actually dared to draw a divine weapon of the human race. You overestimate yourself. There is no need to bother with it, he has suffered the backlash of the divine weapon. He would not be able to utilize his strength for a period of time." Leng Tianzhong nodded and said, "Let's deal with the survivals of the running corpse sect first. Then we can come back and discuss how to deal with this beast." With the intervention of the 12 Heavenly Saber Pavilion Supreme Elders, the running corpse sect lost all their ability to resist. They were not able to do anything as they were beaten into retreat. One of the corpse monarchs wanted to use the earth evasion spell to flee but he was discovered by Leng Tianzhong. Leng Tianzhong snorted and stomped on the ground. The ground rippled like the surface of water and the corpse monarch was thrown out. Mu Xinya took advantage of the chaos to sneak her way to the side of the Heavenly Wolf King. The people of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion were in a chaotic battle, They did not discover Mushinya's petite figure hidden by the huge body of the Heavenly Wolf King. Sage Ancestor, are you alright? Mushinya concealed herself by the Heavenly Wolf King's ear and called out anxiously. Blood was flowing out of the Heavenly Wolf King's mouth non-stop. His eyes were full of dissatisfaction. He was clearly a step shy of obtaining the Spirit Vein origin, a step from propelling himself to Fiend Emperor. He would be the first person in thousands of years to lead the Heavenly Wolf race to dominate the land, to spring the entire Fiend race to power. However, he failed at the last step. He made the wrong move and stepped into a deep abyss. He was left with nothing. The Heavenly Wolf King's huge head tilted slightly to the side. He looked at Mushinya and raised his left paw slowly. He made a crescent-shaped wound between Mushinya's eyebrows with his sharp claws. Blood spilled out from the crescent-shaped wound. She was startled, but she knew what the Heavenly Wolf King wanted to do. She said, "Sage Ancestor, you can't." On the other side of the battlefield, the forces of the Running Corpse sect were almost all cleaned up. Only a few Corpse Monarchs resisted stubbornly. The Corpse King that Supervisor Lee controlled was blasted into powder by the Martial Monarch Supreme Elders. This made it impossible for it to be revived again. Suddenly, countless black chi poured out from Xiao Chen's pores. When the black chi finished pouring out, the Corpse King imprint instantly vanished. It seemed like the Corpse Monarch who placed the Corpse King imprint was killed by one of the Supreme Elders. Naturally, the Corpse King imprint it placed had instantly scattered. When essence returned to his meridians, Xiao Chen's face lit up with joy. His body had already completely recovered. He thought to himself, since I no longer have to worry about future consequences, it is time to leave here. Who? Just as Xiao Chen was ready to leave, a figure broke through space and arrived before Xiao Chen at lightning speed. He did not say anything and immediately made a move. This person was Bian Peak's peak master, Song Ke. He had coincidentally seen Xiao Chen and his killing intent immediately spilled out. He immediately gave up on his fight and made a beeline for Xiao Chen. With Xiao Chen's cultivation, he was unable to see a trace of Song Ke's movement technique, and he could not react to the speed of a peak martial king either. He was immediately punched at the location of his dantian. Song Ke bore a very deep grudge. He did not pull his punch at all. Bang! Xiao Chen's eyes were filled with fear. His body flew through the air like a kite with a broken string. The Azure Dragon martial spirit, which had just regained its freedom, was smashed into bits by this peak martial king's punch. It turned into a ball of green light and scattered in his body. The spiritual energy leaked out of Xiao Chen's body like flowing water. Xiao Chen thought in terror, "I'm done for. My martial spirit is destroyed. I am crippled for life." This was Xiao Chen's final thought. Before he could think about anything else, he had fainted. He fell into the river with a loud, "Pu Tom." The gushing river immediately washed Xiao Chen downstream. "Yi Chen." Yi Wen smashed a corpse flying with a palm as he cried out. He was completely thrown off by the sudden change of the situation. He looked angrily at Song Ke as he revealed a ferocious expression. He said, "How dare you kill a disciple from my Qingyan Peak? I want your life." Yi Wen pushed his feet off the ground gently and he immediately leapt across the river and arrived before Song Ke. The small saber in his hand created a cool breeze. His saber was hidden amongst the cool breeze as it slashed towards Song Ke's chest. Both of them were martial kings. Originally, Song Ke's cultivation was much higher than Yi Wen's. However, Song Ke had just suffered the backlash of the 9-saber demon punishing formation. He had used all his strength in his previous strike. He was currently short on essence. A clear wind chop at the great perfection was executed. The saber blade could not be seen at all. It was impossible to guard against. Song Ke dodged the chop miserably. He was not able to resist. To think he could be beaten up so passively like this. Go die. Suddenly, Yi Wen roared loudly. The blade hidden in the cool breeze drew near Song Ke. It quickly started to spin. It was another secret technique of Qingyan Peak, profound wind chop. Song Ke thought this strike was the clear wind chop and was caught off guard. The spinning saber caused numerous air currents. It was very fast. At such a close distance, it was impossible to dodge. Damn it. I was too careless. I actually allowed him to execute the profound wind chop at such a close distance. Song Ke felt very vexed. Actually, he did not expect that Yi Wen would attempt to kill a peak master over Xiao Chen. Even though Song Ke already threw himself backward very quickly, the profound wind chop was too fast. Song Ke was not able to dodge it. Pu Kai. One of Song Ke's arms was immediately chopped off. His arm was instantly sliced into bits by the profound wind chop. Blood and minced meat rained down. Ah! Song Ke cried out painfully. He saw his minced up left arm and revealed a horrified expression. He could not believe what he was seeing. Die! Yi Wen turned and gave the distracted Song Ke a roundhouse kick. Then he swung his small saber and several saber images appeared in the air. Yi Wen's saber pierced towards Song Ke's heart. Just as he was an inch away from Song Ke's chest, a few Supreme Elders who saw the situation quickly rushed over. A martial monarch Supreme Elder quickly made a move. He stretched his hand out and caught the saber blade with his fingers. He roared angrily, "Yi Wen! What do you think you are doing, committing such a sin? Are you tired of living?" Yi Wen used a little strength and pulled back his hand. He withdrew his small saber from the fingers of the old man. He said indifferently, "Killing someone from the same sect without any reason at all. Even if he was a peak master, he has to die. Are the matters of a peak master something for an insignificant elder like you to make a judgment on? We will have the law enforcement hall investigate the truth, to get justice for your Qingyan Peak disciple." A Supreme Elder at the side said. Yi Wen laughed coldly. "The law enforcement hall? What a joke. You know how the law enforcement hall works. How old are you already? Are you not embarrassed to say that?" Insolent. When one of the Supreme Elders saw that Yi Chen did not care about them at all, his face could not help but twitch. He could not resist sending a palm strike at Yi Chen. A martial monarch cultivator had started to comprehend the law of space. Although this palm strike was an ordinary palm strike, it became extraordinary after the laws of space were applied. It was very mysterious. The palm was clearly headed for Yi Wen's chest. However, just as Yi Wen was prepared to make a move to deal with it, the palm suddenly vanished and ended up as an attack to his side. Boom. The difference in cultivation realm was too big. Even though Yi Wen was a medial grade martial king, this ordinary palm strike sent him flying back. He vomited a large mouthful of blood and fell on the ground heavily. Who? Finally, Shen Manjin leapt into the air after she eliminated all of the corpse monarchs from the running corpse sect. Then she walked gently, as though she was taking a leisure stroll. She instantly arrived before the group. Everyone was surprised to see her lily-white hands smash toward the two people that held up Song Ke. A formless palm struck Song Ke's body with a loud bang. Song Ke's body immediately flew away from the support of the two people. Huang Dang! Huang Dang! Song Ke rolled back continuously, until he reached the side of the underground river. He was in an extremely miserable state. He climbed up and asked, "Martial Aunt Shen, why?" The two Supreme Elders who had berated Yi Wen earlier did not dare to say anything when Shen Manjin made a move. In this place, Shen Manjin was the most senior and she was the strongest. If one looked at her, it was obvious she was very angry. No matter how good their relationship with Song Ke was, they did not dare to give any advice. They could only lament Song Ke for being unlucky. Shen Manjin snorted coldly and she ignored him with an icy face. She slowly walked to the side of the underground river and frowned as she looked at the turbulent water. Suddenly, Shen Manjin shouted. Essence surged out from her entire body and her clothes fluttered non-stop. Her aura kept rising continuously while the wind blew wildly and whistled incessantly. At this moment, she violently sent a palm strike at the riverside. Wah! The force ran through the entire river within the cave, hundreds of meters of water. The gushing river surged and was tossed up in the air. Not a single drop of water was left in the river, and all of the fishes that used to be in the river rained down from the air continuously. Shen Manjin's gaze swept through the place where the river used to be. However, she did not see Xiao Chen at all. The turbulent water had already washed his body to an unknown place. She sighed and waved her hands. The water in the air immediately fell back with a loud boom. This was the might of a peak martial monarch. With a casual wave, she could cause the river to surge and flow backward. Shen Manjin stood at the riverside and mumbled to herself for a long time before she left. Pooh! Just as the crowd was about to exhale in relief at the sight of Shen Manjin cooling off, the Heavenly Wolf King's huge body gave off a loud sound that resounded through the cave. The crowd shifted their gazes, but they only saw Mu Xinya floating in the air quietly. Her eyes were closed and her silver hair and clothes fluttered in the wind. There was a silver crescent moon in the middle of her eyebrows that gave off a smooth mirror-like ripple. That's bad. The Heavenly Wolf King passed on his strength to the last, Leng Tianzheng said loudly. One of the Supreme Elder at the side said hoarsely, "We were all distracted by what happened here and did not pay any attention to the Heavenly Wolf King." Right after this Supreme Elder finished his words, the group looked somewhat hatefully at the one-armed Song Ke. If he had not attacked and killed Xiao Chen, things would not have become this complicated. Otherwise, how could the Heavenly Wolf King be able to pass on his strength to Mu Xinya under their watch? Once his strength was passed on, it would be impossible for them to extract it from Mu Xinya. This was because of Mu Xinya's current cultivation. She had not reached the stage of condensing a sage core. If they killed her, the Heavenly Wolf King's strength she inherited would be scattered. Furthermore, the more horrifying thing was that the instant this girl died, the 1,000 years of the Heavenly Wolf King's cultivation would explode, the entire cave would collapse. With the exception of a few people, who could survive the said explosion without problems, most of them would die and the other people would not be able to escape. Although they felt very angry, they could not do anything. How hateful! Shen Manjin scolded as she sent a palm strike at Song Ke. Her palm was very fast and she instantly struck Song Ke into the underground river. As of now, she had lived for close to 300 years. Although she currently did not show any signs of being at the end of her life, she could not guarantee when it could happen. Only by entering Realm of Sages could they be assured. However, this matter had been spoiled by Song Ke. Song Manjin hated that she could not smash him to death with that palm strike. TL note: entering the Realm of Sages likely meant becoming a martial sage. At the certain point in the story, the author started calling martial sages and martial emperors as sages, holy man and great emperors. The one-armed Song Ke struggled in the water. The essence of this pitiful martial king had gone into chaos when he was struck by the palm. After he swallowed a few mouthfuls of water, he managed to climb back to shore with difficulty. Mu Xinya suddenly opened her eyes and a bright light shot out from her silver eyes. She glared at the people present. Heavenly Saber Pavilion, you best not mess around with my sage ancestor's body. I will be back. After she spoke, she threw out a strip of jade. It turned into a ball of fire and flew to the bottom of her feet. Following that, she slowly burned up in a raging blaze and vanished from the underground cave. Divine Flame Talisman. Such a thing still exists. The expression on a Supreme Elder's face turned even more despondent when he saw the jade strip that Mu Xinya had threw out. The Divine Flame Talisman was a transportation-type secret treasure. After it burned the owner up, it would send them thousands of kilometers away before it vanished into nothingness. According to rumors, the refinement method of this kind of talisman was preserved in the Great Jin Nation. However, it was very expensive. Each one would require 2,000 inferior grade spirit stones. Furthermore, it could only be used once. Each time it was used, it was equivalent to burning up 2,000 inferior grade spirit stones. Although it was expensive, it was not worth mentioning when compared to one's life. Originally, some of them planned to lock Mu Xinya up until she completely absorbed the strength of the Heavenly Wolf King. When she condensed a sage core, they would extract it out then. Although it required more time, there was still hope. When Mu Xinya used the Divine Flame Talisman, all their hopes were completely extinguished. A Supreme Elder sighed. 100 years of effort has gone down the drain. Although the old Fiend King is dead, a new Fiend King is born. I'm not even sure if the Heavenly Saber Pavilion can withstand the attacks of a Fiend King. The tributaries of the river were many and complex, the undercurrent surged violently. After Xiao Chen sank down to the bottom, he was quickly washed to an unknown place while he remained in an unconscious state. The Azure Dragon was at home in water. Xiao Chen, who had the Azure Dragon martial spirit, would be able to hold his breath for very long in water. However, now that his martial spirit was destroyed, he was just like an ordinary person without any special abilities. Logically, he should have drowned at the bottom of the river. His stomach should have been filled up with water, and his body would have swelled up after 2 hours had passed. After 10 hours had passed, he would float up as corpses normally did. However, his current situation was incredibly strange. His Azure Dragon martial spirit was already destroyed and he was completely crippled. Yet, he was able to breathe in water like before. Xiao Chen flowed along the water in the dark deep river and was washed to an unknown place. Occasionally, aquatic weeds and duckweed would twine around him as he drifted along with the fishes. 2 days later, Xiao Chen woke up. He felt incredibly weak and had a splitting headache. His body was being washed down by the water and under the assault of the violent undercurrent, he found it difficult to even turn his body. Feeling the situation of his body, Xiao Chen felt that it was strange. He could not understand why he was able to breathe underwater when his Azure Dragon martial spirit had been destroyed. Calm down. Calm down. Xiao Chen thought to himself continuously in the torrential waters. Although he could breathe underwater, his situation was still full of dangers. Song Qiu's full-powered strike as a peak martial king not only destroyed his martial spirit and scattered his inner strength, it also caused severe internal injuries. His internal organs had all suffered varying degrees of damage. If Xiao Chen's body was not much stronger than normal, tempered 7 times by the 7-leaf flower, his heart would have been shattered immediately. Xiao Chen drifted along the undercurrent for 2 days. He was not able to deal with his internal injuries and he could not eat either. Xiao Chen's body was now extremely weak. If Xiao Chen could not figure a way out of this turbulent water, his body would only get weaker and weaker. In the end, it was a problem of how long he could hold out before he finally gave out and he died. In the moments that Xiao Chen spent in his thoughts, he was flushed another several hundred meters further. Xiao Chen could not help but feel more fearful of the ferocious undercurrent. Xiao Chen welcomed the undercurrent as he did his best to turn his body over. A turbulent undercurrent suddenly assaulted him and caused his body to roll over continuously. Ji Yu Nong, Ji Yu Nong. The sudden change in situation forced Xiao Chen to swallow a few mouthfuls of water. In this moment of chaos, Xiao Chen grabbed onto some weeds and did his best to stabilize himself. The weeds were quite resilient. Although the undercurrent was strong, the weeds did not break when Xiao Chen grabbed onto it. The weeds were as thick as Xiao Chen's arm and helped him to stabilize his body. Xiao Chen finally caught a break. He turned his head to look up. Although the river water was somewhat cloudy and he could not see clearly, it was not dark. This proved that this river was not too deep. Since it was like this, he had to think of a way to get up there. The thing that prevented him from doing so was the undercurrent at the bottom of the river. The moment he let go of the weeds, he would be immediately washed away by the undercurrents. The depth of this undercurrent was about 5 meters, it was in the deepest part of the river. Once he passed these 5 meters, there would not be any undercurrent. By then, he would be able to float up naturally. If Xiao Chen still had his essence, he could easily leap out from this river in one breath. After he landed, he could even make all of the water on his body evaporate instantly. However, not only was he severely injured now, his martial spirit was destroyed and he could not use any essence. Furthermore, he had not eaten for 2 days. The moment he released the weeds, he would be washed away by the ferocious undercurrent. After he rested for half an hour, Xiao Chen carefully observed his surroundings. He slowly touched the sides of the river and discovered that they were made of silt. After he stepped on it, he would immediately sink half a meter into it. Xiao Chen was filled with joy, he managed to think of a way to get back to shore. As long as he went along the silt and stuck his arm into it, he would be able to climb up slowly. Just as an insurance, Xiao Chen looked for a 10-meter strip of weed first and tied it around his waist. After he finished doing that, he executed his plan. His every step in the rapid undercurrent was incredibly difficult. When Xiao Chen reached the silty slope at the side, he did not dare to be careless. He climbed up step by step as the undercurrent assaulted his body. There were a few times where he was almost washed away. He sank his arms deep into the silt and the area beneath his nails were filled with black silt. Soon, he escaped from the danger. After he spent a lot of effort, Xiao Chen finally managed to escape the undercurrent. He relaxed his body and removed the weed from his waist. When Xiao Chen got to shore, he felt extremely tired. The dizziness he felt became even more intense. He did his best to focus and resisted the desire to lie down. Then he removed all of his wet clothes. After that, he took out some dry clothes from the universe ring and put them on before he swallowed a blood-replenishing pill. Once he finished all of this, he dragged himself up to a cliffside and leaned against it to rest. Unknowingly, Xiao Chen fell asleep, he was simply too tired. When Xiao Chen woke up, his spirits had recovered. With the assistance of the blood-replenishing pill, his physical injuries were better as well. He took out some dry rations and water from the universe ring. He devoured the food ravenously and downed the water in a big gulp. After eating them, he recovered some strength. After that, Xiao Chen got up and examined his surroundings. He was in a dim cave. Xiao Chen tried to extend out his spiritual sense but to no avail. The spiritual sense he was so familiar with did not appear. Xiao Chen could not help but smile bitterly. Seems like he had really turned into a cripple. He slowly walked to the riverside and looked at his reflection. The calm river surface reflected back a pale countenance. After being soaked in the water for a long time, Xiao Chen's skin had turned frighteningly pale. There were even some places where his skin had peeled off. He had reverted back to his original looks. The appearance he had changed into using the shapeshifting spell had been lost. However, Xiao Chen could not be bothered about this. After he cleaned the silt out from beneath his fingernails, he walked alongside the river and moved downstream. Regardless of the situation, he had to find an exit first. Ti-da. Ti-da. Occasionally, water would drip from the ceiling. The instant the droplet fell, Xiao Chen's body would move back to avoid it. The droplet would skim by his nose and fall to the ground quickly. Seems like my physical strength is still here. My ability to fight has not disappeared. Even without essence, I can easily feel the location of the falling water droplets. Xiao Chen revealed a pleasantly surprised expression as he clenched his fist. Under the influence of gravity, the speed at which the water droplets fell was very fast. Even so, Xiao Chen could rely on his physical abilities to detect the direction that the water droplet had fallen before he easily dodged it. The reaction speed of his body was equivalent to an ordinary martial Grand Master. This helped Xiao Chen to regain his self-confidence. Even without a martial spirit, I can rely on my body to become a sage. It has been done in the past before. I can do it as well. A resolute light appeared in Xiao Chen's eyes. After he walked for a long time, it slowly became brighter. Xiao Chen could not help but increase his pace. After a while, he arrived at a wide clearing. A vast underground world appeared before Xiao Chen. It was several hundred meters high and unmeasurably broad. There were trees, grasses, and flowers, there were even rivers. It was unknown where the light above his head came from, it was very strange. Xiao Chen hesitated for a little before he stepped in. He felt as though he had stepped through a barrier and a negligible pause in time seemed to have occurred. Xiao Chen walked in and out a few times. He was afraid that something was wrong. After he discovered that he could enter and exit freely, he no longer cared. Ga Ji. Ga Ji. Suddenly, a few birds flew over from the forest in front. Xiao Chen was mildly startled. There were living creatures here. I have to be careful. If I run into a ferocious beast, then I will be in trouble. Bang! Bang! Just as Xiao Chen had this thought, a huge spirit beast rushed out from the forest. This was a scarlet flame bear. When it stood upright, it was as tall as two people. Its red eyes looked at Xiao Chen, filled with murderous intent. The scarlet flame bear was a rank 2 spirit beast. It was about equivalent to a martial master. Xiao Chen had met some before in the Seven-Horn Mountain. It looked ferocious but there was nothing special about it. However, if Xiao Chen wanted to deal with it now, it would be a little difficult. Pooh. Just as Xiao Chen was thinking, the scarlet flame bear got on all fours and rushed over. Very soon, it arrived before Xiao Chen. Its paws, which carried several hundred kilograms of force, smashed over. Xiao Chen did not panic. Before the front paw of the scarlet flame bear had arrived, he felt the change in the direction of the wind and stepped to the left calmly. He dodged the attack. Xiao Chen shouted and focused all of his strength onto his right fist. All the muscles on his right arm bulged. Xiao Chen seemed to feel a boundless energy as his fist punched at the scarlet flame bear's chest at lightning speed. In the next instant, the scarlet flame bear's stout body was punched and flew back with a bang. Xiao Chen could hear the sounds of its internal organs being smashed. After it fell down, it no longer got up again. Xiao Chen looked at all this in shock. After a moment, he saw that the scarlet flame bear was really dead. He muttered, "How can it be? At my peak, the strength of my fist is only 1,500 kilograms of force. Currently, my martial spirit is shattered and my injuries are not completely healed yet. Logically speaking, being able to output half my previous strength is already a far stretch." The weight of the scarlet flame bear was at least 500 kilograms. To send it flying with one punch while shattering its internal organs would require at least 2,000 kilograms of force. Xiao Chen felt suspicious as he looked at his fist. He was in disbelief. In that earlier punch, I felt as though I had not used all my strength. Yet, why is it my strength even more powerful than before? Xiao Chen thought for a long time but he could not figure out the answer. Next, Xiao Chen entered the forest. He found another scarlet flame bear on the outskirts. When it drew near, he punched this one too. Just like earlier, the 500 kilogram scarlet flame bear was sent flying. Its internal organs had shattered and it died. Only after this did Xiao Chen believe that all of this was real. His strength was even stronger than before. Could it be that my cultivation has not disappeared? This strength of my fist should be about 1,750 kilograms of force, close to 2,000 kilograms. Otherwise, it would be impossible for me to kill the scarlet flame bear in one punch, Xiao Chen said in a confident tone. What is going on? Why did the strength of my physical body increase? Xiao Chen pondered for a long time but he was still unable to come out with an answer. After a while, Xiao Chen smiled faintly. Never mind, my strength increasing is a good thing. Since I can't figure it out, then there is no need to overthink this for now. Thinking this, Xiao Chen left the forest. The depths of the forest gave Xiao Chen a dangerous feeling. There should be spirit beasts which were even more powerful in there. Xiao Chen used the remaining time to search this unknown underground world. In the southeast direction, Xiao Chen coincidentally found a natural herb field. All sorts of spirit herbs grew verdant and thick in the entire place. There were also several spirit herbs that had aged for several hundred years. However, before Xiao Chen got close to the edges of the herb fields, he felt several strong auras. Occasionally, he could hear some horrifying beast roars. They were all strong spirit beasts. Given Xiao Chen's current state, he could forget about going any further. To see a mountain of treasure but be unable to obtain it, such a feeling was very depressing. Xiao Chen avoided this region and continued to walk forward. Although his martial spirit was destroyed, he still had his physical strength. His pace was not slow. Within a day's time, he had investigated an area with a radius of at least 1,000 meters. Xiao Chen discovered that he had completely underestimated the size of this underground world. After he walked for an entire day, he had not even covered half of it. It was unknown why, but there was day and night in this underground world. The brightness changed with the flow of time and would slowly turn dark. There would definitely be some unknown dangers in the dark night. Xiao Chen did not dare to stay here. He retreated until he arrived at the barrier around this world before he stopped. He decided to sit down cross-legged and attempt to cultivate. Xiao Chen had not lost all hope after his martial spirit was destroyed. The Azure Dragon was an ancient holy beast, there must be something special about it. Currently, Xiao Chen's body was completely void of spiritual energy, he was currently an ordinary person. Compared to when he just arrived in this world, he was weaker. At the very least, that Xiao Chen had 10 odd years worth of spiritual energy that he had cultivated. Although he was unable to turn the energy into essence, there was more than enough for him to use the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. However, there was no spiritual energy in Xiao Chen now. In order to train to the point he was back then, it might require 16 years to do so. If it was so, no matter how strong his perseverance was, he would probably give up. Xiao Chen felt the surrounding spiritual energy. He paid attention to his dantian as he breathed in and out. He maintained a calm mental state as he kept on repeating these actions. This was the most basic breathing method in the Tianwu continent. Aside from those people born with an innate martial spirit, most people did not have spiritual energy in their bodies when they were born. Without spiritual energy, there was no way to circulate any cultivation technique. At this point, one needed to practice a breathing method to absorb some spiritual energy into their body. When the amount of spiritual energy reached a certain level, one would be able to formally start cultivating. There was no difference in grades or ranks for breathing methods, it was common throughout the Tianwu continent. Slowly, the gases that Xiao Chen breathed out through his mouth became denser. From a distance, it looked like a blurry sword, it did not disappear. Hu. With the next breath Xiao Chen took, some spiritual energy turned into mist and entered his mouth. It slowly flowed into his meridians and circulated for a cycle before it settled down at the dantian. It was about the size of a small toe. Xiao Chen felt joyful, he had not expected that the first strand of spiritual energy he absorbed would be so large. He would be able to gather enough spiritual energy soon and circulate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Xiao Chen was worried earlier that it would require 16 years. Seems like his worries were unfounded. After he experienced the process once, the second time became smoother. After 4 hours, the spiritual energy which had settled in Xiao Chen's dantian was sufficient to circulate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Xiao Chen stopped the breathing method and started to prepare to try circulating the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Wah! The Purple Thunder Divine Incantation circulated successfully without any problems. The surrounding spiritual energy poured wildly into Xiao Chen's body. It poured in endlessly and completely exceeded Xiao Chen's expectations. Why is this happening? Xiao Chen thought in astonishment. Suddenly, he remembered something Yi Wen had mentioned in the past. There was a danger of exploding if one cultivated in the underground tunnels. Xiao Chen's complexion paled. He wanted to stop but he felt reluctant to do so. When he cultivated the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation in the Seven-Horn Mountain, a similar situation had happened. After that, he had successfully condensed his martial spirit. If he gave up now, it would be too unfortunate. If he missed this chance, he might never see the hope of recondensing his martial spirit again. I'll risk it all. The path of martial cultivation is filled with dangers anyway. Fighting against heaven, fighting against men, fighting against oneself. One must be ruthless, regardless of who it is. If I am unable to make it through this, then how am I going to go against men or even talk about going against heaven? Xiao Chen made up his mind. Not only did he not stop, he even increased the speed of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation's circulation. Thunder crackled above, a whirlpool appeared above his head and spun continuously. The whirlpool sucked in the spiritual energy rapidly before it sent the energy into Xiao Chen's body. A bolt of lightning flashed through the air, winds howled and thunder crackled, a mysterious phenomenon was occurring. Xiao Chen's body was restless, spiritual energy filled up and bloated all of his meridians. His meridians were now much wider and stronger compared to the previous time. The amount of spiritual energy it could contain was several times greater. The moment there was any instability, Xiao Chen would explode and not even leave a skeleton behind. Boom. Just as Xiao Chen felt like he could no longer hold on, the 361 acupoints all over his body suddenly opened up. In each of these acupoints, there was actually a tiny azure dragon. The 361 azure dragons opened their jaws and instantly sucked dry all the spiritual energy in Xiao Chen's body and saved his life. The whirlpool above his head had not stopped yet and fresh spiritual energy poured in immediately. When Xiao Chen was no longer able to hold on again, the 361 azure dragons in his acupoints opened their jaws again and emptied Xiao Chen's body of spiritual energy. If seen from a distance, Xiao Chen's 361 acupoints gave off an azure glow. His entire body looked like it was a huge azure dragon formed from numerous small azure dragons. Mist came out from the dragon's mouth as it surged forward and roared loudly. It controlled numerous phenomenon as it accepted the baptism of thunder. So my martial spirit did not disappear, it was only separated into 361 tiny azure dragons and hid in my acupoints. As Xiao Chen thought this, he was pleasantly surprised. Every time the azure dragons sucked dry the spiritual energy, Xiao Chen felt like his entire body was washed in spiritual energy. It was extremely comfortable. This happened for a total of 361 times. The mysterious phenomenon in the sky disappeared and the whirlpool above his head entered his body with a "soothe" sound. The spiritual energy around him finally stopped pouring in. The whirlpool turned into a miniature whirlpool of qi. As it slowly spun, drops of qi slowly dripped down. At first, the rate of dripping was very fast. Every round the qi whirlpool spun, there would be one drop of qi. Towards the end, the rate slowed down and even after 10 odd revolutions, there still would not be a drop of qi. When Xiao Chen counted, there were exactly 361 drops of this mysterious fluid. He did not know if this was a coincidence or not. When Xiao Chen looked carefully, he got very excited. He discovered that this fluid was an extremely pure essence. I clearly did not condense a martial spirit, only a whirlpool of qi. To think it can actually convert spiritual energy into essence. How strange. Xiao Chen had doubts as he said this. Looks like my martial spirit really was not destroyed, it simply continued to exist in another way. This is good as well. Condensing essence from the qi whirlpool is much faster than the previous method. Xiao Chen slowly controlled his essence to circulate around his body. He discovered that his cultivation had not fallen at all. Be it in terms of purity or volume, it was that of a medial-grade martial Grand Master. After Xiao Chen circulated his essence through a great cycle, he opened his eyes. A purple light shot out and broke through the dark night. This became 2 dots of purple lights in his eyes before it disappeared. Xiao Chen got up and looked into the distance. He clenched his right hand into a fist and his body filled up with energy. The feeling of grasping his strength once again caused Xiao Chen to feel incredibly good. He could not help but roar out. It was like a dragon's roar. Long and continuous, it reverberated continuously in the surroundings. Roar. Xiao Chen punched the air in the direction of a huge rock 50 meters away. Suddenly, the Fengyan acupoint in his palm opened and the azure dragon in there disappeared and turned into a strand of azure light. It extended throughout his arm and his entire right arm was instantly filled with a huge force. A strong force was thrown out in the direction that Xiao Chen punched. It struck the 2-meter rock with a loud boom. After the huge rock was struck, it immediately shattered into pieces and flew everywhere. The azure dragon in the acupoint could actually turn into an azure light and struck out along with the wind from his punch. This was a joyous surprise. Furthermore, its might was very strong. This is only the azure dragon from one of the acupoints, yet it is already so mighty. If I can open up all 361 acupoints, how strong will it be? Xiao Chen was filled with hopeful thoughts. He tried to punch out several times but discovered that his acupoints remained closed. No matter what he tried, it would not open. It must have used up all the energy and temporarily could not be executed. Xiao Chen was not worried either. There was still time in the future and there was no need to be in such a rush. Following this, Xiao Chen took out the lunar shadow saber from the universe ring. He executed all the martial techniques he knew once. There was nothing stopping him from executing all the martial technique he knew. Furthermore, there were even some improvements. They were significantly stronger than before. Xiao Chen completely relaxed after this. It seems like he had completely recovered all of his strength. Not only did the fist of Song Ke, a peak martial king, not manage to destroy his martial spirit, it even resulted in an increase in his strength. Or perhaps, this was the true face of the Azure Dragon martial spirit. It would be resurrected after being destroyed and establish a completely new system. It completely aroused the potential of the Azure Dragon martial spirit that Xiao Chen did not know how to utilize. A silver warship flew speedily several hundred meters in the sky. Xiao Chen stood at the helm as the wind blew by his ears. His spiritual sense spread throughout the surroundings and checked the area carefully. After he recovered his essence, he was able to use his spiritual sense and secret treasures. After the break of day, Xiao Chen rode on the silver warship and headed for the natural herb field. There is a rank 5 spirit beast, Lightning Ox, in the northeast direction. It is guarding a rank 6 herb, Phoenix Blood Vine. The Phoenix Blood Vine is a natural herb that can be used directly to increase the chi and blood of a cultivator. There was a python he did not know the name of in the northwest direction, but it should be a peak rank 5 spirit beast. It was guarding a golden lotus flower. According to the Compendium of Cultivation, the golden lotus flower was the main ingredient of the mysterious returning pill. It was worth 100 inferior grade spirit stones. There is a one-eyed wolf in the south. It is a peak rank 5 spirit beast. It was guarding a rank 6 herb, needle-leaved grass. It is worth 50 inferior grade spirit stones. Now that Xiao Chen could use his spiritual sense, he quickly investigated the situation in the herb field from high in the sky. This underground world was saturated with spiritual energy. There were all sorts of natural treasures. With such a great cultivation ground, he temporarily had no plans to leave. He was preparing to do some training. What he needed now was herbs that could strengthen his body. Xiao Chen withdrew the silver warship back into his right eye and slowly landed on the northeast side of the herb field. There was a scarlet phoenix blood vine there and it could be used to directly improve a cultivator's chi and blood. It could straightforwardly raise the strength of his body. Although it was not comparable to the 7-leaf flower which could include a rebirth-like effect, it was still an item that he could not have too much of. After he ate it, he should be able to increase his strength by 250 kilograms. Xiao Chen landed firmly on the ground and walked towards that lightning ox. The lightning ox was covered in purple skin and was at least triple the size of the oxen from Earth. There was a silver horn on its head that could instantly release a horrifying lightning. It could paralyze a cultivator and it could even zap a weaker cultivator until they were charred. Moo. When the lightning ox saw Xiao Chen approaching, it kept mooing angrily non-stop at Xiao Chen. A rank 5 spirit beast had already developed a certain level of intelligence. It was able to tell how dangerous Xiao Chen was and it felt like it should not get near him. Xiao Chen smiled faintly. He ignored the moos and pushed off the ground with his feet. All the muscles in his body bulged, filled with explosive power. He completely relied on the strength of his body as he leapt towards the lightning ox. The lightning ox had very fast reactions. The instant Xiao Chen leapt over, it pushed off the ground with its forehooves and kicked up a cloud of dust. It then charged towards Xiao Chen, who flew over from the air. The lightning ox was about 1,000 kilograms. Its charge carried about 2,500 kilograms of force. It had a very strong momentum. It would be able to push over a small mountain. Xiao Chen did not dodge. As he clenched his fist, it gave off a highly pala sound. All of his body's strength was focused on his right fist as he struck the lightning ox's head heavily. Bang! One man and one beast facing off. Close to 5,000 kilograms of force clashed against each other. It gave off a very loud sound as a ripple spread in the air throughout the surroundings. The taller plants in the herb fields were all turned into dust by the ripple and only left behind the underground parts. There was a huge force and Xiao Chen's arm felt numb. He was knocked back by 5 meters. When he landed, he even slid back for another 2 meters. The lightning ox was not feeling any better either. It was knocked rolling by the punch. Its huge body rolled several times on the ground before it came to a stop slowly. The lightning ox got up in an instant and its eyes revealed its rage. A purple electric glow was gathered on the white horn. The lightning attributed energy in the surroundings poured wildly into the horn. In an instant, it turned into a dazzling glow. Highly Pala. A bolt of purple lightning broke through the air and flew toward Xiao Chen at a great speed. Everything the lightning passed turned into purple ashes, even the dust in the air. When looking at it, the lightning looked even more frightening. With one look, the onlooker would be able to tell that the might of the purple lightning could not be underestimated. Xiao Chen did not dare to go head-on against it. He executed the Azure Dragon Cloud soaring art and turned into a flood dragon. He soared into the air and continuously changed his position. A bolt of lightning chased after Xiao Chen from behind unrelentingly. After a while, Xiao Chen's surroundings were densely covered in lightning, as though it was a cage. Under the electric light, all of Xiao Chen's hair stood up. Although he was not struck by the lightning, the air seemed to be filled with electricity. His skin had already generated a significant amount of static electricity. Oh no! Xiao Chen exclaimed in his heart. To think that the intelligence of the lightning ox was so high. Although it looked like it fired the lightning bolts randomly without any pattern, it was actually done in a certain rhythm. This caused the lightning to gradually gather together. Shua. 9 bolts of lightning as thick as an arm gathered together in the sky. It looked like 9 pillars rising up and supporting the sky. The lightning rushed at Xiao Chen. Heavenly lightning shield. The speed of the lightning was very fast. Furthermore, it gathered together from every direction. Even the most exquisite movement technique would not be able to escape them. Xiao Chen had no other choice but to defend. Chi 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 chi. The 9 huge pillars of lightning gave off a ZZ sound when they met the heavenly lightning shield. The shield had the ability to absorb lightning, but the strength of this lightning was too great. It only held together for a while before it shattered. The remaining lightning all struck Xiao Chen's body. Xiao Chen's body gave off a highly pala sound and all the clothes he wore tore apart. This revealed his explosive muscles. Electricity kept jumping around on his skin. Fortunately, the heavenly lightning shield had absorbed half of the lightning, its might had been significantly reduced. Xiao Chen did not suffer any life-threatening harm. Xiao Chen endured the pain he felt as he leapt into the air and arrived at the side of the lightning ox. After using its ultimate move, this was the moment where it was at its weakest. If Xiao Chen allowed it to recover before he dealt with it, he would end up wasting a lot of time. Flight on wings, disordered dance of 1,000 years. Xiao Chen's arms moved around and turned this martial technique meant for swords into one that was used by fists. His body flickered around as the wind from his fists howled. In the blink of an eye, he punched out at the lightning ox at least 1,000 times. Bang! 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 Every punch carried at least 2,000 kilograms of force. When they struck the lightning ox's purple body, it continuously cried out in pain. However, there was nothing it could do about Xiao Chen, who moved about at a high speed. Die. When the disordered dance of 1,000 years ended, Xiao Chen landed beside the lightning ox. The Fengyan acupoint in his right palm opened up and the azure dragon in there turned into a ball of azure light before it enveloped Xiao Chen's right hand. Xiao Chen could immediately feel the strength he had in his hand yesterday. Crunching sounds came from the body of the lightning ox and all its internal organs were shattered. Its huge body was punched back by several tens of meters. Black blood clots came out from its mouth. This lightning ox was dead as a doorknob. Xiao Chen sat down cross-legged and slowly dissipated the lightning left in his body. The whirlpool in his dantian spun rapidly and the surging essence instantly squeezed out or absorbed the lightning left in his meridians. After a while, Xiao Chen got up and changed into a fresh set of clothes. Then he headed for the rank 6 herb, Phoenix Blood Vine. He carefully picked it before he placed it in his universe ring. After that, he cast a glance at the dead lightning ox before he slowly walked over. He took out a small knife and started to dissect it. The body of a rank 5 spirit beast was full of treasures. Xiao Chen did not wish to waste them. Especially the silver horn on the lightning ox. It should be several decades old and had received the tempering of lightning. It could be used to forge a lightning-attributed bone weapon. Its value was no lower than the Phoenix Blood Vine. Xiao Chen took out a jade bottle and collected the blood. He retrieved its inner core and sliced off the delectable parts of the lightning ox. He only left with a satisfied feeling after doing all of these. Xiao Chen originally wished to stay here a little longer and collect all the herbs in the surrounding area. However, the earlier fight had attracted the attention of other spirit beasts. It was still relatively easy to deal with a single rank 5 spirit beast. If there were many of them, it would be very dangerous. Furthermore, from the aura he felt, Xiao Chen even sensed the presence of a peak rank 6 spirit beast. It was one of the spirit beasts standing guard in the central area of the herb field. Xiao Chen had checked it out earlier. That was the place with the densest spiritual energy. There was also a flowing light marigold growing over there. The flowing light marigold was an extremely precious rank 7 herb. One flowing light leaf had the healing effects of a rank 6 medicinal pill. Furthermore, there were several rare medicinal pills in the Compendium of Cultivation that required this leaf as an ingredient. However, the most precious part was still the flower. The flowing light flower bloomed once every 800 years. Just one of its petals could allow for one to increase their spiritual intelligence significantly. Spiritual intelligence was what cultivators referred to as comprehension ability. After consuming the flowing light flower, it would allow the cultivator to increase their comprehension ability. As a result, they would comprehend movement techniques, martial techniques, and the likes faster than other people. It could allow a person with ordinary talent to transform into one that overflowed with talent. For example, Xiao Chen had not comprehended the highest stage of the clear wind chop. If he ate this flowing light flower, it might be possible for him to comprehend it immediately. Of course, all of this was just wishful thinking. In the vicinity of the flowing light flower, aside from the peak rank 6 spirit beast that stood guard there were also several rank 6 spirit beasts in the surroundings that eyed the flowing light marigold covetously. Before Xiao Chen could even get near, he would be dead without even a corpse left behind. Withdrawing his thoughts, Xiao Chen rode on the silver warship and fled the area before these spirit beasts rushed over. He stopped at a huge tree not far away from the herb field. This huge tree was several tens of meters tall and extended into the clouds. Its leaves were lush and luxuriant. Xiao Chen seemed very small when he stood underneath it. There were many treasures in the herb field and he did not have any intentions of leaving just yet. He intended to make this place his base. He would go to the herb field every now and then before he came back to cultivate. Xiao Chen revealed a smile as he took out the phoenix blood vine. This phoenix blood vine should at least be 100 years in age. If he took it to the market in the heaven viewing platform, he would be able to obtain at least 60 inferior grade spirit stones. Xiao Chen took out a sharp knife from the universe ring and peeled the bark of the phoenix blood vine away. Afterwards, he cut out a small piece and placed it in his mouth. He chewed several times before he swallowed. The phoenix blood vine instantly turned into a hot energy that flowed into Xiao Chen's body. All the qi and blood in his body surged. Xiao Chen felt as though every cell in his body was being heated up and filled with energy. Consuming a natural treasure directly was very dangerous. The last time he swallowed the 7-leaf flower and the 7-leaf fruit, it happened under special circumstances. It was a situation where there were 1,000 things to do and he was urgently in need of energy, which made him fearless back then. This time, it was different. Xiao Chen's qi and blood were flourishing. If he directly ingested the phoenix blood vine, the flourishing qi and blood would immediately burn up. It might even be possible for him to spontaneously combust. Xiao Chen ate the phoenix blood vine piece by piece. When he ate about a third of the phoenix blood vine, he felt as though his body was going to explode. As such, he quickly stopped. Xiao Chen sat down cross-legged and started to circulate the enormous amount of medicinal energy and completely refined it. Essence slowly flowed along Xiao Chen's meridians and acted as a catalyst for the phoenix blood vine's medicinal energy. After half an hour, Xiao Chen finally managed to completely refine the medicinal energy. He felt that his entire body was hot and his blood was surging. He felt like he was burning up like a flame and filled with energy. He looked up and searched the distance. Xiao Chen found a huge rock about 1 meter high. He could wrap his arms around it. He walked forward and casually punched out. Kai. The hard rock seemed like mud to Xiao Chen. He easily punched a hole in it and pulled his arm back with a shua sound. Xiao Chen revealed a faint smile. Before consuming the phoenix blood vine, a casual attack from me would have about 1,500 kilograms of force. After circulating some essence, I can achieve 2,000 kilograms. A full-powered strike would achieve 2,500 kilograms. Currently, I have only consumed a portion of the phoenix blood vine. A casual strike from me has already achieved 1,750 kilograms of force. If I consume the entire phoenix blood vine, I should be able to achieve the force of my previously full-powered blow. Xiao Chen felt very excited, so he punched out with all his strength and struck the huge rock with 2,750 kilograms of force. The huge rock immediately shattered into countless small pieces and was shot out in all directions. Xiao Chen was stimulated by the corpse monarch from that day. The body he had always been proud of was not even worth mentioning in front of that corpse monarch. To Xiao Chen, this was a form of humiliation. It caused him to have a desire for a stronger physical strength. Now that there was such a good opportunity, Xiao Chen definitely had to cherish it. He had to continually temper his body. Most cultivators would not cultivate the body stubbornly like Xiao Chen did. To them, cultivation realm was the most important thing. With a higher cultivation realm, one's essence would naturally be stronger. Circulating strong essence could achieve the same effect as a physical body with several thousand kilograms of strength. However, Xiao Chen did not think of it in this way. He had a hazy impression that the cultivation of a cultivator was inseparable from the physical body. Only if the physical body was pushed to the peak at the same time could he walk further along the path of cultivation. People like Ji Changkong, Mu Chengshe, Chu Chaoyun, Hua Yunfei, and Duan Muqing had innate martial spirits. They were geniuses with incredible talents. Their current progression was very fast. The fastest amongst them was probably a medial-grade martial saint already. However, it would be hard for them to reach martial king or martial monarch. If they were lucky, they might even reach martial sage. However, without a strong body, they would never reach martial emperor. In the following 2 days, Xiao Chen practiced the clear wind chop when the sun was up. He attempted to comprehend the third stage of the clear wind chop, where one would see the cool breeze but not the saber. He practiced unceasingly and he had already touched the threshold of the final stage of the clear wind chop. All he needed was some time and he would be able to make a breakthrough into the great perfection stage. When it was late at night, Xiao Chen would continue to consume the phoenix blood vine. After he refined it, his qi and blood would be strengthened, increasing his overall strength. On this particular day, Xiao Chen placed the final piece of the phoenix blood vine into his mouth and chewed it. When he felt the surge of hot energy, he immediately sat down and refined it. Xiao Chen slowly circulated his essence. When the last bit of the phoenix blood vine's medicinal energy was completely refined, the vine that had merged with his body over the past 3 days suddenly surged up. All of Xiao Chen's qi and blood surged continuously. A white smoke was emitted from the top of Xiao Chen's head. Boom. After a while, Xiao Chen felt as though the qi and blood in his body were exploding. Pa, 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 pa. Cracking sounds came from the bones in his body. The 361 acupoints that covered his body all opened up. Streams of azure light were emitted from his acupoints. If another person was present and saw Xiao Chen from a distance, they would discover the image of an azure dragon that coiled around Xiao Chen and enveloped him completely. However, Xiao Chen was not shocked at this sudden turn of events. Instead, he felt familiar with it, as though he had experienced such an event 10,000 years ago.